Hello and welcome back to my life story. Anybody, anybody who's new, welcome. Any return viewers, thanks for coming back. Just a quick recap. So, on the last vlog, I'd done 10 years in London. I've now moved into a flat on my own. I'm 40 years old and life is good. Now, I think I'm probably like a lot of men. I don't know, women might be the same. Get to a certain stage and you start thinking about, I wish I had that car. There's a car I really want, like a Porsche, a Lamborghini, Ferrari. And I'm no different. I had hopes, but didn't really want a supercar. I was more into the big old American 4x4 trucks, a bit like what Lee Majors used to use in The Fall Guy. And so I made the decision and I went looking and I went looking. Couldn't find an American one, but I eventually found a truck of my dreams, and it was a Mitsubishi 4x4 twin cab truck. I had some money left over from what John Luke had given me from the sale of the flat, but not enough to purchase it. So, like a lot of people, I had to get finance for it, but I went to the bank and got a loan. Now, it wasn't a brand new one, it was second hand, bought from a dealership. I had to pay the VAT on top. £28,000. That's a big outlay. But I was the proud owner of a Mitsubishi jet black, my dream car, or van, or truck, if you like. I mean, living in London, I didn't really need a car. You get on the tube and buses and everything else, but so I used this basically when I was doing scuba diving still. And driving, going away, could put the bike in the back, put loads of scuba equipment for the club. Went down to Chesil Beach quite a few times with it. Helped people off the beach when they got stuck with it. So it was a comfy car. Did a lot of driving around in it, but not ideal for London, even though there's loads of 4x4s in London now. So I'm living on my own. I've got a good job working for Lambeth Council. I'm enjoying life. Working Monday to Friday, weekends off. Scuba diving. Used to do still doing the training in the swimming pool on a Friday after work. And then after the session, then we'd go in the pub and have a few drinks. Wasn't very deep in the Streatham swimming pool, only about 4-5 foot deepest. But we also used to do a session at Crystal Palace in the dive pool there, which was about 25 foot deep, which was ideal for the next stage of training. And again, that was on a Tuesday night after work. We'd finished the session and we all used to go to a little Italian restaurant in Crystal Palace. And we were the only people in there, really. They used to stay open late for us. Sometimes it was 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning before we left. And I had to get up for work the next day. But it was, comradeship, all the friends there from the new students. And as I say, even though I couldn't do the open water anymore, I still went with the club on the weekends. On top of this, I was still cycling. I was still swimming, still going to the gym. So I was still active. And I found a cycle shop not far from where I lived called De Vere's. And Maurice De Vere, who was the owner, he was actually the first coloured person to take part in the Tour de France back in the day. And he set up this cycle shop in Streatham. And they used to do like club rides on a Sunday up into Surrey. And so I started going there. And then I soon realised that the bike I had wasn't suitable for what they were doing. And Lambeth had come up with another cycle to work scheme. So I applied for another loan from them and bought myself a nice Italian racing bike. So now I've got two bikes. One I'd use just going to work. My truck used to stay at home. I'd cycle to work. Use the truck after work and at weekends. And then I'd go cycling on a Sunday. It was also at this time I became a bit of a consumer. So I moved into this flat. Didn't really have a great deal of stuff. And then I started buying. Hey, I've got a good job. Getting a decent amount of money. Even though I got a big loan out for the van. Get a credit card. Get one credit card and then you get offered another credit card. So I ended up with like 3 credit cards. So I've got 3 credit cards. I think I had something like £6,000 or £7,000 credit on them. And cost of living not that cheap in London, so I was spending quite a bit of money just living. As I say, it was £1,000 a month for my flat. It was a nice flat. Nice 1-bedroom flat, big lounge, big bedroom, big bathroom, big kitchen. But it was quite expensive when I think about it now. And it was a upper floor flat, only 2 stories high, with a communal garden area outside, which I utilised a few times when it was nice and sunny. Now, I got into the bug of buying things, and I think it was a way of retail therapy to sort of like, I don't know, to help with the loneliness, which might sound a bit strange because I had quite a good group of colleagues at work, which we'd go out for drinks together. Then I have the dive club members, and then the cycling group. But I still felt quite lonely. You know, even though I had all these friends and stuff. And I think buying things was a way of defending against the loneliness. Now, I've always been a reader. I love reading books. I still do. And I must have had over a couple of years, 500 or 600 books on shelves. Hardbacks, softbacks. A lot of the books were science fiction fantasy. I think that was because enabling you to forget about life and go to a dream world, if you like. Again, that helped with the loneliness. Now, while I was still at Lambeth Council, they came up with a scheme for day release for people who wanted to further their career. And I was lucky enough to apply for it, and I got day release and then I ended up going to university. So I signed up for a housing degree course, which was over 3 years, but actually 2.5 school years, if you like. And I became a mature student doing housing studies. I had to use quite a few of my holidays for the days to go. It was only 1 day a week. Lambeth paid all the fees for the books and everything else. An occasional cover for the days I had to go, but some of the other days I had to use my holidays days. Now this was a real revelation. You know, I think I was 41 when I started on going to university, which is something I really hoped to have done when I was younger. You know, the whole 18 years old, going to a university, living on campus, all that sort of stuff. But it was quite a good crack, because we were at the same university with all these younger students. Obviously, the people on my course were older, more mature students. But it was a fascinating course. We covered everything from housing law, housing design. And in the second year, there was a field trip, and it was a field trip to Holland. It was to study how the Dutch manage their social housing, and also to look at the architecture of housing there. So we got a coach trip to Amsterdam, which was our first port of call, and looked at some of the fantastic housing there. Stayed in a hotel, had a few free days, so we explored Amsterdam's underbelly, if you like, as well as the sightseeing places where sightseers normally go, Anne Frank Museum, things like that. And then we travelled around Holland over the next few days, visiting different places. That was a great trip, and really enjoyed it. Some of the housing, the Dutch housing, was unbelievable, especially the ones which they built over the waters, you know, reclaiming the water areas. That was fantastic. So yeah, moving on. That was the second year. I'm still working for Lambeth Council in the call centre. And in the third year, I obtained my housing degree. So there I was, I've got a degree. Maybe I can go and work in the city. I think that was a pipe dream, early pipe dream. Then it wasn't going to happen for me. Now, I started like dropping off a bit more with the driving, because it wasn't as fulfilling. Teaching was still good, but I missed going out into the open water, diving on wrecks and things like that. I started to pull back a little bit from that, but then I started concentrating on the cycling more. Now, I've been going out with the De Veers crew quite a few times, but some of them were quite athletic, you know, the road racing people. They were going a bit too fast for me, really. And then I got another bike, and I got a fixed wheel bike, which is what a lot of the couriers use in London. No brakes, only goes when you pedal, only stops when you stop pedaling. And I found that useful for going to work. I mean, London's very flat anyway, not what you call any hills. But at the weekends, when I went out to Surrey Hills, Now there were some nice hills there. I followed the course of the tour of England took. But I started going out on my own more. So Saturdays and Sundays. Saturday not so much, because I used to end up going to the bar after work with colleagues, have a few beers, go to a restaurant, have some food. Occasionally go to one of the London clubs. I actually used to go to a place called Heaven, which is a big gay club in Charing Cross. Opposite where I used to work in the Players Theatre, actually. I think I saw Cher there one night. Kylie Minogue another time. It was always a good vibe. And because London runs the night buses, you didn't have to get a taxi home, cost you like an arm and a leg. You can get a bus. Unfortunately, if you fell asleep on the bus and the driver didn't know, you'd end up back at the station. A couple of years previously, I'd done that on a train when I was living right out in the sticks. I got on the train and fell asleep, went through all the stations and ended up on the Shunting line right at the end. Woke up in the middle of nowhere, didn't know where I was. I had to get a taxi back. It cost me about 30 quid. So yeah, not ideal. Anyway, so I'm still at Lambeth. Call centre's going well. I've now got a degree. I've got a slight promotion at work. Getting a bit more money. And then what happens? A new election, local election, a new party takes over of Lambeth Council. Labour Party takes over. Okay, that's got to be, it happens all the time. But unfortunately, they decided that they didn't want the call centre. It was costing too much money. And it was probably better to outsource it to a private company. So, after all the millions spent on it, they started looking to outsource it. Now, they came across a company, an American company, who were based near Tower Bridge, and decided to outsource the call centre. Just the housing side of it, which I could never quite understand, because they had environment and social services in the call centre. But the housing side was the biggest drain on the resources. So as I say, after all that time and money spent setting it all up, it's goodbye. They're going to get rid of it. Oh dear, what's going to happen to me? Well, they decided that a lot of the staff which was working in the call centre could move to the private sector. So, luckily for me, I was interviewed, and there was a position which was very similar to what I was doing, reporting and systems. And so I then moved to this new company. So after 6 years, I moved to this new company, based as I say, at Tower Bridge, overlooking the Thames. Nice office environment. A bit further to cycle, but I think I used to cycle about 10 miles, 12 miles to work and 12 miles back. And I found some nice little off-street roads and through parks and things to make it safer. So what I'd do, I'd take my suit and shirts on a Sunday into the office. I'd store like a storage place in the office, so that then I could cycle to work in cycle clothes. And if I got wet, it didn't really matter. They had showers at work, and then I could get changed and put my suit on. So I'm working there. I was on salary, slightly better pay, but unfortunately the hours wasn't like the 9 till 5 I was working in Lambeth. It seemed to go from like 9 till 8 at night sometimes, and the demands from the directors and the senior management were a bit more difficult to deal with, as Lambeth was a lot more laid back with the council, but this was a private concern, so everything had to be done straight away. I was there, I think, about a year, and then they brought in another guy who was just a bit senior than me, but he had a lot more experience. He was called Peter, coloured guy, and he taught me quite a lot while I was there, computer-wise, system-wise. I mean, I was looking after, I think there was something like 100 staff working on the phones, and I had to deal with all their time management, system issues, and then reporting, as I say, to the managers and the senior managers and directors. So, 3 years in, then this company gets bought out by another company, a bigger company. That lasted a year. Not much changed. And after that year, that company was bought by an even bigger American company. Now this company, they were global. They built tanks. They worked for the NSA in America. They covered a vast range of things. I never really understood why they bought a housing call centre, but obviously part of their portfolio. I think they were trying to increase their presence in England. And I was a bit unsure about working for a company which made armaments and drones and technology for drones and things like that. And I was also worried about my career. It's a new company. So what happened is that they also bought another company doing housing in other parts of England. And they decided that they could centralise a lot of the stuff. And I was offered to reapply for my job. Now, because I'd worked for Lambeth for so long, and I'd moved over as part of the concern from Lambeth to the private sector, I'd time served, you know. And if I applied for the job, got a job, I would have been starting off on a brand new contract. So I was offered the alternative redundancy. So if I took the redundancy, I'd have the time served from Lambeth, so it was a fairly decent amount of money. Or I could apply for the job, get a job. Sorry about that. Get a job and then start with a brand new contract and lose all that time served. Well, a couple of months before this had happened, I picked up a book, and it was by a London reporter who decided to go get on his bike, pack some bags, and cycle around England, well, the UK. And I was fascinated by it. And I was thinking, I could do that. I mean, I was coming up to 50 years old. I was thinking, that would be an adventure. I could do that. And then came the option to take the redundancy. So I thought, yes, that's what I'll do. I'll take the redundancy, get a proper bike for travelling, and set off around England. So, yeah, I took the redundancy, £35,000, a lot of money. But I had my bank loan and my credit cards. And because I've been spending so much, I didn't really have any savings. So I said goodbye to the call centre, became a man of leisure for a couple of weeks. That just involved getting drunk. And then started looking into touring on a bike. So it's quite a big adventure. So I think what I'll do, I'll talk about that in the next video, actually. Yeah, I don't want to keep waffling on and extending the videos beyond a reasonable time frame, because I want to hold your attention, but I don't want to bore you. So this is chapter 3, part 2, and I'm now up to 50 years old. And my next video will be my grand tour, my grand cycle tour of the UK. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.